Hello and welcome to this month's market update. I'm joined by Phil Naylor, member of our capital markets and asset allocation team. Welcome, Phil.
G'day.
Great, so let's get started. We're into July and it's a great time to look back at the financial year and see how did the key asset classes perform.
Yeah, so it ended up being quite a good year for investors. We saw there was a bit of a hiccup towards Christmas, but then equity markets really rebounded. So overall, Australian equities were up around 11%, and that's true as well for domestic market equities. And even investors in fixed income did well. The fixed income was up around 9%, as we've seen central banks around the world move towards easing.
Great. There's a bit of a surprise there on the fixed income
Absolutely,
return.
yep.
So let's look forward into financial year 2020. What do you think will be the key themes driving asset classes going forward?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's probably 5 key themes, 3 international and 2 domestic. I think on the international front, it's got to be central banks. We've seen, as I said, central banks move towards easing. We've had the RBA here cut rates twice to 1%. Expectations are that the Fed in the US will cut around 4 times over the next year or so. And also in Europe, we've got a changing in the guard with a new ECB president coming in, so markets will be watching that pretty closely. I think second of all is trade policy. It was a big issue the last 12 months. It's an issue that's not going away anytime soon. We've seen the US and China come to a bit of a truce recently, but as we've followed this topic, we find that when there is a truce, unfortunately sometimes it can be short-lived, so it is a risk event going forward to the next 12 months. And finally, on the international front, it's got to be China. We've seen a hiccup in terms of growth from China the last 12 months. Since then, policymakers have come through and provided some easing. So far, it's been okay, but markets will be watching that pretty closely to see if that's enough to keep things ticking along there.
Great, thanks for highlighting
Yeah.
the top global themes. What about domestically? Any key themes there?
Yeah, sure. So I think for Australia, one of the themes could be fiscal policy. We've seen the RBA come through and cut rates. Over the next 12 months, we may see sort of a turn towards looking to fiscal policy and what could be provided there. We've seen the tax cuts. They've come through and we'll see just exactly how much that supports the economy. And the other area in fiscal policy is infrastructure. We know there's a big pipeline of works coming, and so any changes to the timing or size of that could have a big impact. And I think rounding up the top 5, I think the last thing for domestic policy is the price of iron ore. That's almost doubled in the last 12 months. That's been a big change there. That's obviously been good for our earnings of some of our big mining stocks. It's also good for Canberra, filling up the coffers, but the bad news is we think the price of iron ore will probably ease off over the next year or so. So just given that the price increase has been driven by supply issues, and that'll probably come back online the next 12 months.
Great, well thanks Phil. It's great to get the summary of key themes to look out for, and thank you to you for joining us.